Little nauseous smells.
Here we are. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Are you all ready?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm ready.
Are all of our viewers and guests ready to listen in on tonight's show? Well, if you are, let's hit it this way. Viewers, welcome to listening in tonight to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Welcome back again. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of Real Men Real Talk Live. This week on episode 198, we are so excited to have in the studio Sundance, who was introduced to us by Chris Morrison. And so Sundance, we chatted a little bit about having you join us this week. And I want to invite you to share with us the topic that you picked is from trauma survivor to thriver. What is the meaning? Why did that topic have such a meaning for you? Why did you choose to land on this topic? I'm going to invite you to kick us off, get us hot, light us up, and get tonight's show going on. Why are you all about from trauma survivor to thriver? Tell us more, sir.
Let me just first of all acknowledge each one of you for this creation, Real Men, Real Talk Live. That's a powerful creation, and the question that you asked me, from trauma survivor to success thriver. I need to also just sort of feel that it's been quite a journey, life. And I think as a little kid, for myself, I didn't necessarily come equipped to know how to deal with trauma when it first occurred in my life. And so there was a period of time in my life where I became really impacted by the results of what people would frame or call trauma. It had to do with a world of addiction. But it also had to do with things that occurred intergenerationally also. And in Canada, there's something called the Indian residential schools. This is something that is passed. This is something that the government acknowledged happened. And within these government-run schools and day schools, Indigenous children were rounded up and put in these schools. And there was a lot of abuse that happened in these schools. My father was one of those children that attended these schools. And so Canada as a whole, this is something that has just come to the surface in the last couple of years, although people have been telling stories about it for a century. And so in this whole process, my father became a survivor of the schools when he got out of it. And he just wasn't taught how to raise a child because he was taught by an administration. And so it was because there was a lot of misunderstanding in that area. There was a lot of unprocessed trauma and a lot of unprocessed stuff that got offset onto me. I had to figure out a way to work with that and to turn my life into something that I would view as success.
What are you making of? What are you making of what you just heard, Kamala, if I may ask? And by the way, welcome back, Kamala, as well as Chris Morrison to Real Men Real Talk Live this week. This is one of those topics that we either wrap our head around it or we don't. And many of us have done everything to avoid the feelings that come with surviving trauma. Chris or Kamala, what'd you hear come through from Sundance?
Yeah, Elena Mike, aloha. Hello, everybody. What I heard from Sundance is that the main thing I got out of what he just said is that until somebody is willing to do the work and feel the feelings and choose differently for themselves, trauma just passes through family lines and continues to go. That pain exists until somebody in the family is willing to feel it. And I think it takes a very brave and courageous soul to be willing to do it. And sometimes in my life, it's felt unfair to have to heal from other people's wounds that became my own wounds. And I viewed myself as a victim of my trauma for a really long time. And I really like this topic of shifting it from being a survivor or a victim of trauma into someone thriving. And a big component of that for me was actually realizing the kuleana, the responsibility behind making that choice to heal, and instead looking at it as I actually get to heal this for my children and my children's children. And I get to be the good ancestor who gets to rewrite the whole script for everybody down the line. And that became from like this heavy burden of like, wow, I have to do this, to like, what an incredible opportunity to be in a position coming from a family lineage of trauma to now be able to shift that and give something better to the world, to give something better to my children. And yeah, I really appreciate tonight's show, and I think it's a really important thing to be discussing, especially right now.
I love the get to aspect of this, right? Today for me, like the way I step into this is I get to position myself as a great grandpa to my unborn grandkids. The first grandpa in 3 or 4 generations, right? My biological father did not know his father, didn't know his name. So, I have very little time that I spent with my biological father, and the times that I have been very wild. So to step fully into like, I am not going to interact with my kids in a way that they won't want to be around me. I'm going to do everything I can to be the best father for them. And so that, I put it out there the other day. It's like, what things do I need to step into and do today that my grandkids would thank me for?
What is an example of one of those things, Chris?
The biggest one is just making these stands to take my kids. Right, not let things just drag out for years and years, more years, right? This crap's been going on in my life for 5 years, and I took a stand in January, and I'm taking a stronger stance today, so, and really, having to just dial into the fact that like, Me being the sole provider for the kids, their sole caretaker right now, is the right thing for them. It's just that simple.
You seem, Chris, if I may, I'm feeling a heaviness, a real heavy energy right now coming through you. Are you okay?
I am actually.
Hmm.
Like, I really actually am. Like, I've put a lot of thought and intention. I've had a couple of days to process what's going to go on today and front load and prepare myself. And yeah, and so I've had a lot of time to
That was a
front
salute.
load.
That was a salute for you, by the way, Chris Morris.
Appreciate it.
You know,
Kava
hold on a
from my
minute.
Kava man.
Before you go further, I just got to tell you, man, I love you. I'm giving you a hug right now.
Thank you, brother. I fully receive that. So,
You know what
yeah,
you're sharing?
go ahead.
What you're sharing, man, is so important. It's so valuable, and it's really so valuable that other men see this. Because one of the areas in my trauma was people that knew they didn't do anything. In other words, it wasn't like there wasn't things going on behind the scenes that, like with what you're doing, right? Making sure that things are sort of in order so we can move things into place for transition. But there were other people around that I visually saw that were complicit in it, that didn't do anything. But that was the norm for them. That wasn't out of the norm. That was called functioning. This is how we function in life when there's trauma. That becomes the relative positioning point of our life. And then everything orientates around what it is that we can do to cope.
Tell us more.
And so, like, for me, that was really what I learned in those settings. What I learned in those settings was, okay, this is how I can cope. This is how I can find a reprieve.
What did that look like for you? How did you cope?
Well, I remember being young and waking up after a party, and there's a bunch of booze and all that sort of stuff around, and well, I thought that looked like, man, I should just drink that too. Then I'll drink that. That sounds like that looks like everyone else is doing it. Now everyone's passed out. It's my turn. And so I went around and finished the beer and lit myself a cigarette at 8. And so, one of these things is like to just go from that and then finding our way into shelters at various places throughout the city that I live in. That was a godsend and a grace. But the thing is for whatever reason, when I was going through those shelters, was that for whatever reason, this impact point of where the trauma started to happen it was like I disassociated from it. And I went through 3 different shelters, and it became more and more distant until it was forgotten about and there was no memory of it anymore. Right. And so by the time I'm in grade 6, I'm 11 years old. I'm hanging around people that are a little bit older than me, and their big brother's big brother is getting us beer. So that's 11 years old, right? So I'm finding a way to kind of get back to where this reprieve is going to be. Because my first relationship was with drugs. That was my first romantic relationship. And so that became a ritual that picked up. And it wasn't until 2006 that I checked myself into treatment. Right. And so we go from basically 1991 to 2006 of where my amount of using is gradually picking up. I don't realize that I'm coping. I'm not even thinking that I'm coping. It's totally oblivious to me. Intergenerational trauma, totally oblivious to me. Separate, detach, totally oblivious to me. I think I'm just finding a way to cope or to sort of find a reprieve, right? This seems palpable to me. This seems like I have an automatic understanding and knowing. It seems innate. And so when I went to treatment in 2006, I found a few things out about resentment and addiction. I wish I could say that in 2006, when I got out of treatment, I stayed clean. My stop in treatment in 2006 was basically me just hitting my ass on the way down, because I still had another 6 years, 6 to 7 years or so of using left in me after that, where I would constantly go in and out of 12-step programs, finding a way to clear the wreckage of the past and to function in day-to-day life. Because really the problem wasn't when I had the drugs or the alcohol. Sure, that was a problem. But there was a bigger problem when I didn't have it. That was really when the real trouble began. And so for me, how I found myself to become someone where people hire me to work on some of this inner stuff was through a medium that people use. It's called the 12-step programs. And that became a gradual thing that over time became a way for me to work with people. I didn't think about that when I was going to 12-step groups. That is not at all the way that it was. I wanted to go to these groups and find meetings so I could just find a way to get through the day clean. One day. Give me one day in a row that I can do this. And we'll start from there. And when I got 2 days, and when I got 3 days, and when I got 4 days, and I start to struggle, there would be this thing called a therapeutic value of one addict helping another, or someone that's in recovery helping another. And then I found when I sat down with someone when I was struggling, that for whatever reason, when we shared like this, open, honest, willing, there was a connection there. See, because I knew who I was sitting with, that I was connected to them. We had a common interest. We were connected in that way. And so that's where we met. We met at that common interest. And for whatever reason, things just seemed to balance out. My system seemed to feel good after I sat with different people in recovery, and that became a holistic process for me. And that built gradually over time till you're looking at like a decade later and 2 decades later, where it moved into a coaching practice. But this here, how this all came to be, my life as a professional coach, happened because of a chance that I took in enrolling myself into treatment.
Yeah, I got a question for you. How did stepping into treatment, did it dissolve your relationship with the traumas, or did it just dissolve your relationship with using alcohol and or drugs to numb out and avoid feeling the pain that came with the trauma?
That's a good question.
Separate entity of focusing on the trauma, because we get caught up a lot of times in the 12-step rooms. They save lives, but that also then becomes our identity. I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, when in fact we tend to spend more focus on the sobriety, but many times we don't always go deep enough to heal the traumas that got us numbing out in the first place. So I'm curious, whether it be for you, Sundance, or Chris, I know you've spent some time as well. Tell playing in the rainforest, if I may refer to it that way. So, for either one of you, how has embracing sobriety impacted your relationship with past trauma? Are they just two separate entities? Has one been able to help you dissolve, or is it just an ongoing process?
Well, I think me and Chris could write a book on that I am statement.
Yeah. Nice lead there, bud. Yeah. That's something that we talked about while we were in Mexico together, is just like how we get attached to that term. I am
Blank.
whatever it is, blank, right? Overeater, sex addict, alcoholic. And so, but to get back to what you're saying, I think, 12 steps was like 12 steps were great to arrest me from wanting to use every day and giving me a space to go that with like-minded people. 12 steps also built in the muscle of sharing openly, right? Like I don't think I'd be able to have the conversations in the authentic way that I do now without having been in the rooms and knowing that if I don't share what's going on, I'll probably not stay clean. And so it shaped my ability to have this conversation. But as far as like really digging into the things that caused me to pick up, I think for some people it can. I think that it has a modality, it has a process that works for certain people, and for those people, it really does work. And for me, it got to a point where it's like I just got to a spot where it's like I'm not getting any deeper with this. I'm still bumping into the same issues, and I'm not able to resolve. Not until just this last year have I been able to step really fully into, you know, I was just on the phone with somebody and they're like, when did your people pleasing start? And I was like, when I watched my mom get her ass whooped at 4 years old, like wanting to step in and save my mom. That's when it started. So and did recovery help me in my people pleasing and my sacrificing myself all the time for others and not knowing and not allowing myself to clearly say like, this is what I want in my life, only giving myself the space to say like, this is what I'm going to do for others. No, I did not get that from there. So, so it was a great, beautiful space to come into and start this journey. I think that there's, somebody asked, where are all the men in the mindset world and in the self-development world? And then I was like, they're there. They're in the rooms. There's tens of or hundreds of thousands of men doing some form of work, and it's beautiful work, and it's a great start. It was a great start for my process, and I know I can speak, for a lot of people, it's a great start for their process.
All right, so let's get down to the meat of it, man. How do we free ourselves from our traumas?
We need to. Oh, go for it.
Tips, tricks, or tools. What do you got?
Well, okay. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to trauma, there's no tips, tricks, or any of that for me. There's none of that. We're not going to be able to take the projection, aka what I'm looking at with my eyes, and do something to that. The screen that we look at, the way that I'm seeing you right now, whatever it is, whatever mind trick that I think that I can do to try to override what it is that I'm seeing here without first looking back at the source of where that projection is coming from in the first place. That's where the projection is coming from. That's the point right there where it started. And it's gone through here, and now I'm processing it on this screen as something that my trauma is recognizing is you need to defend yourself, and you need to defend yourself now. Because I did something when I was younger. I compromised my authenticity as a child to attach. Compromised authenticity to attach to our caregivers, could be parents, could be someone that we look up to in life. They wanted something done, or they were a certain way with whoever it is that they were being in that moment in life. And I knew as a child that if I disturb them in who they're being in that element, if I bring my emotions, if I bring my feelings to how they are, that's going to disturb them. So what do I do with my authenticity? I say, well, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to show real emotion, raw emotion, feelings. I'm going to show attached. So I'm just going to stay silent about that. I'm going to suck it up. There's a lot of little instances like that throughout life where, as men, just the social psychology of men need to suck it up. Where we train ourselves not to cry. At least that was the way that, for me, it just seemed automatic. I've often thought that I could be emotionally insensitive because I don't necessarily feel like crying. But when I'm by myself, I'll cry.
Have you always been able to cry by yourself? Because I haven't quite identified what it is for me, but I still really struggle with that one.
You know, I heard from an elder. They said, when you cry, Sundance, that's the spirit overflowing. And I thought, oh man, yeah, give me some more of that. Give me some more of that. And you know, whatever part of that is that's overflowing in us, let's not be caught up in judging it. Let's be with the overflow. Whatever that overflow is, it doesn't need to be named. I remember the first time I really had like a real deep cry. It was at my dad's funeral, you know, and I looked at him, and I all I could do was cry. You know, that was really all I could do was cry. Lost him to addiction, you know. When healing isn't something that we see as like this actual option in life, it's hard to take. And even thinking about what the healing process is for men, to think about what the healing process is, it almost gets overcreated. Well, what do I got to expose? What do I have to make transparent? What am I going to have to tell? Do I have to tell us the group of people? Well, I have to tell one person. Who do I got to tell? What are the implications? What are the implications of me telling my story? Who do I have to tell, and what does that mean by me having to tell? And so there's so much that the mind can do with that, man. And you know what? It's not true. Because if you tell, you will become liberated. If you share, you'll be invited to talk to men like you guys. There will be support in unlimited realms if you're willing to share. Your share will become a service to men globally. You can have an impact globally just by sharing your story.
And I really like what you said about the willingness component, and that being, I think, the most crucial component is if there's just a willingness to go there, all the other pieces of how it's going to work, how the healing, all the people that are needed for that will fall into place. That's been my experience. As long as there's a willingness for the healing, the opportunity to heal will be there.
Yeah.
Nancy Clarkson, who's a beautiful woman and viewer of Real Men, Real Talk Live, she says, just suck it up was one of the most concerning things that my ex-spouse would tell my boys. So proud of the parents and guides now that teach their boys that they can be vulnerable. Constance says, Constance Serrano says, he's talking about you, Sundance. It's like a crack baby. It's their foundation and all they know. So to go through that and 16 years later to check yourself into rehab, realizing that that was not normal is deep. That's her affirming and sharing a positive compliment, acknowledging the courage and strength that it took based on what you've shared so far, Sundance. So thank you for sharing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to those people that commented. It's powerful stuff. I mean, this, like, we have such a magnificent divine essence inside of all of us. I mean, I try to speak only for myself, and I don't want to try to put things into people, but I believe that there is divinity in each one of us. And through that divinity, we have the opportunity to have conversations that shift the consciousness of the globe and shift perspective in people's life, influence whatever it is. But to get in touch with our innate gifts that are within our authentic expression, that's where the real sort of miracles happen. Like, I found my way into recovery and everything started to shift because I started to be like, hey, I sing, right? I'm not musically inclined. Like, I'm savant musically inclined. And so that becomes this thing where it's like, wow, like I was blinded. I even had any of that intact because I was so caught up in my, finding ways and means to get more. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the gift that was there for me. That was free. The gift was free. The gift was untapped potential, pure untapped potential. I was cruising right over it, man. And when I found it, that began to grow. That little spark began to grow. And that authentic expression, when I started to write down my story, it was like, wow, there's a huge value in me writing down my story now. It's also a healing process. Not only am I going to go and do a talk on Tuesday about what happened here, I just finished creating from something that I wanted to hide and never tell or ever expose because I was afraid. I was afraid of what might happen. And now I'm creating with what was once fear, but now is liberation. I'm transmuting this.
I want to put this up on a screen here and invite either any one of you gentlemen to respond. Kristen Carabella is someone who I personally know in my life. And it strikes me here what she said is, in my personal experience, AA and NA didn't hold space. She's talking about a personal relationship here. She says he died 6 times illegal, BLC by 10 a.m. Bullshit. So that's her experience. Clearly, there's something that she's still working through as far as the programs let somebody down. So the program didn't provide to this individual that she knew what they needed to be free, to be free of their own pain, free of their own trauma, free of their own drama. So I'm curious. I want to invite Kamalu or you, Chris. How would you respond to Kristen in this moment here?
Just like all religions, just like all things man-made, they're imperfect.
Hmm.
And they're led and run by people, and people are imperfect. And these are these creations are our interpretation of what has been given to us by the divine, and yet we still fall short. And so yes, these programs, these religions, these things can fail us.
I think that's a fair statement, Chris. Totally.
Yeah, and that the only thing that is true is connection to spirit, is connection to God. The only thing that's kept me clean. I've held my drug of choice in my hand 6 times since I got clean. And the only thing, the first 4 or 5 times, the only thing that kept me clean was my connection to spirit. The last time was my connection to my boys. The last time I wanted to, and the last time I held it in my hands and I wanted to use, the only thing that kept me clean was knowing that my boys would be without a father. And so, yes, they fail. People fail. We fail each other. Hell, Jay, I've failed you in some ways, not showing up for production meetings when I said I would. Like I'm perfectly human and fall short. Right? I fell short in my relationship with Nicole. I did. You know, as good of a guy as I am now, I fell short. And that's who we are, and that's okay. And we have to look at it, own it, not allow it to become who we are. I made this mistake, so therefore I am that mistake. I am human. I make mistakes, and that's okay. I have the potential to always grow.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to piggyback on what Chris said. No, and I'm grieved to hear about the loss that she's experienced as the result of addiction. This is addiction. Addiction takes lives. It's that simple. I don't know any old drug addicts because they're all dead. One of the things that I needed to become used to is of being a part of a fellowship of people that are trying to get clean was getting used to going to funerals. I remember in just a short period of time, I went to 3 funerals, and it just seemed, it was like, wow. I was stunned. And then in January, I had a return visit to the treatment center, and I started to cry in the group at this return visit. And she said, Sundance, it just seems like you have a whole lot of unprocessed grief. And she was right. I did have a lot of unprocessed grief. And because it's difficult to be around that. And I want to find someone or something that I can put that grief on. But ultimately, I am the one that needs to be responsible. Those programs are there. I don't need to go. But I did anyway, in searching for some type of hope. Something happens in between meetings sometimes. We fall back into it. But guess what? There's still hope. There's still hope. There's still people getting clean. We got to focus on the positive. I lost my father to addiction too. Wish he would have went to a meeting. I wish he would have went to a meeting. Hell, anything could happen if that happens. The possibility and the potential is in your hands. You got to do it every day. You've got to want you've got to taste your recovery in life. You've got to taste who you are every single day. You've got to want it more than you want to use. It's that simple.
Yeah, at Sundance, you haven't heard me say this before, but I'll repeat it. Some of us are living to die, and others are dying to live. And for me, that's a big crossroad that we, as men and women, get to choose in our life. We're either living to die because the heaviness, the burden, the pain, the trauma that we experience is overwhelming.
Yeah.
But then there are those that are dying to live. And you used the word hope a number of times in your description a few moments ago. And for me, the acronym for hope that I've embraced is healing our perspective every day.
Mm-hmm.
And our perspective that's been hijacked by our life experiences that we have faced or that we have not. And that's the key. It's so much of it is how badly do we want to be free of our pain. We go through different levels of pain. Some are physical, some are emotional, some are sexual, and some are spiritual. And it's really what we do with it. It's how we either run from it, how we hide from it, or how we embrace it. And I'll tell you what, embracing it is simple, not easy. It's hard. I'm in a moment right now in my own life, and it can be debilitating. It can take you out, or you go out. So, Chris Morrison, you've been an active listener. What are you making of all this? But before you go there, I want to share something. Katrina May, coming in from Canada, she says, "I think when we share, we release a little of the heavy weight that is on humanity's shoulders. It always, always is healthier to release it into the world, whether that be for ourselves or for others." Kamala, what do you make of that? What are you hearing? What'd you see? Coming in from Katrina May.
I think, and I well and truly believe, that our individual healing is the collective's healing, because we are all connected to each other. And there's, regardless if I come from an island in the Pacific Ocean and Sundance comes from a city in Canada, totally different lifestyles, totally different stories, totally different backgrounds. But when we talk and we share about what is either present in our life or what we've have experienced in our life, there's always some level of connection and resonance we can find with those themes. And that's part of the human collective experience. So I think as we continue to share with each other, yes, it feels like a little weight off our own shoulders. It also helps give the other permission. Like if I'm willing to be vulnerable with you, now if you're uncomfortable with vulnerability, there's more permission for you to also express to me things that maybe were challenging. And we get ourselves caught in these loops where we think we're experiencing all of these things alone because we're not talking to each other and no one else is talking to us. And so we think that we're the only person that's really struggling with whatever it is that we're feeling. And the thing that I've found more and more is that what I feel personally is part of what the collective is feeling right now. It's my own unique manifestation of whatever's going on for everybody.
Yeah.
And the more that we talk, the more we're able to find community and connection in that, and actually, I think, up to the reality that we are all connected and we do all feel these energies.
Yeah. That's saying the more personal, the more universal.
I love it.
Ooh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah,
That's good.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah, I wanted to say that because I really heard what you were saying there. I believe.
Yeah. The other one that comes up from the rooms is a problem shared is a problem halved.
Mm-hmm.
I got a challenge for each one of you. What role does compassion play in cutting the cords to trauma?
Well, that would be the first role.
Tell me.
Well, compassion is everything. Compassion is everything. I must have compassion for myself. First and foremost. How am I ever going to have compassion for anyone else if I don't have it for myself?
Well, here's a challenge, Sundance. How many of us come from homes where we even taught what compassion is? That's a word that we loosely throw around in society, as loosely as we throw around the word gratitude, as loosely as we throw around the word or words, I'm sorry.
Oh, if we only had two words that we could live our life by for the rest of our lives, and those two words were compassion and gratitude, and that was only the way that we could focus and orientate our lives. On Monday, I must orientate around compassion, and on Tuesday, I must orientate my life around gratitude. If we did that for 365 days of the year, you wouldn't even recognize yourself by the end of the year. I guarantee it.
Really?
Oh,
how? Are you ready to get? I'm ready to take on this challenge.
I just don't know how there's always a way to look more deeply into compassion or to embody the element of compassion, the richness of what compassion can bring.
What does it mean for you? What does compassion mean for you?
Being able to see who I was in that moment that I decided to ditch authenticity and attach to someone else's thing, and being able to see myself as, like my coach says, little Sundance in that moment, and be like, wow, I love you, man. You're really trying. Like, you didn't have all this shit you didn't have all this stuff at your disposal, and like, you were trying. You were really, like, you were doing what you thought was right. That was like total psychological innocence, pure innocence. But later on in life, you were penalized for that. Holy shit. I love you, man. I love you for who you are and what you did and what you thought you needed to do to survive. And that equipped you for what it was that got you this far in life. But there's a bus stop coming up here, and we're going to pull the dinger. And that little thing that was being used all that time to help you cope, well, that's not going to come with us to the next stop. And we can be cool about that. We can be cool about that.
Yeah.
To me, that's compassion.
And I think it's a tendency of the ego to do that, to step up and try to conform to the other person's things so that we feel safe. Like you said, it's a survival thing. And I think the ego gets a really bad rap in this because people are trying to get out of it. But really a big component of that compassion for me and for my ego was to understand that my ego was doing that because it's what it thought it needed to do to survive, which even though it may be no longer serving me now, it served me then. And it was an act of love for myself that I did that. And it was the best act of love that I could give myself in that moment. I didn't know it.
Yeah, of course.
I love the idea of like deepening compassion daily, right? Like you saw me really kind of going through it in Tulum, just kind of having some epiphanies on how I haven't been able to show up on my own life and be like, this is what I want. This is what I really want, and not having any context from that. And so stepping into compassion of like, oh, wow, like you've never been able to voice Chris, You've never been able to voice what you really want because you've always put people first, other people first from, and it is, coming from those very first memories. How do I keep my mom from getting hurt? Is there something I can do? How can I keep my brother safe, right? The memories of my mom and my dad or stepdad rolling around on the floor fighting, hiding my brother underneath the stairwell and literally putting my body in front of his body so they couldn't get to us. Like those disassociations, maybe is the word. Stole the words from me. I was like, this is what the fuck I want. And to like realize that I'd never had that in me, like kind of spun me out a little bit for a couple days. And now like coming back out of that and coming into like, and that's okay because I didn't know. I had no idea. I just didn't know. And there's nothing wrong with it. And just be like, no, I want to have a really beautiful life, and this is what I want in it, and this is what I want in a partner, and this is what I want here, and this is what I need, and this is this is a non-negotiable. And like, and still like being rooted in saying that, because I've led so much with heart over the last couple of years that I've moved from like some of these stances, and it's just like now becoming more centered in all of that and just what is
Hey,
it.
I just want to jump in real quick here. I got to
Yeah.
get this off my chest, Chris. It has been such a beautiful season to witness how you have evolved and continue to evolve. Um, it's been such a beautiful relationship to watch you nourish, step in to nourish yourself, and step in with courage to make some significant healthy changes in your life. It's been an honor to watch you, to witness you, at times to hold you.
Mm.
And I just want to invite you, as Kamalu mentioned the word ego a little while ago, I want to invite you to just embrace being proud of yourself. This stuff it's challenging, all of it. And at least what I've witnessed is a man that shows up with grace. At least what I've witnessed. And I know it's not always that way, but one other thing that I've embraced, and I've heard you say it tonight in your own words, is we don't know what we don't know. You
Yeah.
said it very early on tonight's show that we're human, we're flawed. We're going to say things, we're going to do things, that we're going to make choices based on our own life experiences, life trauma, life drama from our youngest years, what we witnessed, that we received, as well as what we witnessed through the audio and the visual. And so much of this healing journey to free ourselves from the trauma, survivor to becoming a thriver, is accepting this truth, which is we don't know what we don't know. But once you start to have this awakening of sorts, a spiritual awakening, and you start to really connect the dots to how you've shown up, how you've not shown up, how you've hurt yourself, how you've hurt your loved ones, we get to embrace the true essence of compassion, first and foremost for ourselves. And then if we have been impacted in the trauma in our youngest years by family members, we could spend the rest of our life doing this, pointing our finger and blaming others, including moms, dads, ancestors, grandparents, whomever had an influence on our life. But as long as we're there, we're never going to be free.
Yeah.
We're going to always be a prisoner in our own body temple.
Yeah.
And so the gateway to freeing ourselves from trauma is through self-compassion. We're also compassion for our teachers, those that impacted our life in our youngest years and even in our adult years. Compassion is the gateway.
Yeah.
Is understanding and understanding that if I had experiences that my loved ones had prior to my birth, I probably would have been making the same choices they made. And here's where I got to grow up in my own relationship with my mom and dad. Because in my younger years, I was blaming, I was angry, I was pissed off. But I will share this with you in the years since we launched, especially launched Real Men Real Talk Live. I've evolved. I'm not the same man I was. My relationship with both my mom and dad is different today. My dad's not alive. He's transitioned
Mhm.
8.5 years or so ago. 9 years ago now, I believe, just about coming up on 9. But I'm finally free of that.
Yeah.
I embraced the true essence of compassion that I never had experienced in my life before.
Mhm.
So
I want to
go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say, like, you know, I am part, you know, a big part of who I am is the people I surround myself with, right? I've got one of the greatest inner child coaches in the world as a friend, right? Jay, watching you do your work, nobody compares. I've got Sundance here is one of the greatest men's coaches I've ever come in contact with, right? Like in the world. Right, like I mean, like Sundance and I have people all over the world. You, Jay, have people all over the world. Like you guys, like you help me out.
Hmm.
I ask, hey, what do you think about this? Man, like Sundance literally was like, that's really fucked up, Chris. like that was, you know. And it was like, oh, yeah. Oh, he's like, you shouldn't put up with that. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, man. Like I appreciate it. Like, so I am who I surround myself with, and right, and it's just that simple. But I would like when we do our roundtable, you know, each time. Is it okay if I ask the final question here, Jay?
Go for it, man.
I would like each one of us to close out on what is thriving, right? What is thriving in one, in whatever we have in a minute for each of us. What does thriving look like today? Or what is it to be a thriver?
I can answer that in one word.
Oh, shoot.
I'm gonna hold on to that till the end though.
All right, fair.
I go first.
Please, yes.
Oh, we're at that point now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay, cool.
For me, thriving is authenticity. Thriving is being me and choosing to be me in each and every moment. It has nothing to do with how much money's in the bank. It has nothing to do with where I live or the people around me or any of that. Thriving is choosing to be me and feeling content, not even just content, but just free in that. And then choosing that in every moment, regardless of what's going on around me.
Somebody wrote a kid's book about that. Today I choose to be me. Weird.
Yeah, look, there you go.
Nancy Clarkson pulled one out of the book. I've heard this one before. Mary Kelly said, sounds familiar. Yeah. Nancy Clarkson, I love you, girl. You're so beautiful. She says, feel it, to reveal it, to heal it. That's more than one word, but it's okay. Thanks for sharing that, Nancy. It's beautiful. All right, Chris, what do you got? One word.
One word? Oh crap.
Well, it was your challenge, wasn't it?
No, you
No,
didn't.
I didn't say one word. I said 1 minute. But I mean, can I
Okay.
do it in as few words as possible? Few words as possible comes to radical responsibility to create from joy.
Radical responsibility to create some joy. Is
No,
that
from joy. Create from joy. It is my responsibility. Mine. Nobody else's. To create my universe from a place of joy.
That makes me think of my beautiful partner, Karen, who I'm giving a shout out to right now, who, when she does her work, shares it is with joy and lightheartedness that I serve.
Hmm.
You know?
She is that.
Yeah, totally.
so? Sundance, is this your way of stalling?
No. Now remind me of the question. Let's get back to what's going
What does
on.
it mean to be? What does it mean to thrive or be a thriver?
Everything.
It means everything. That's a question.
It means everything. Because for me, when I look inside, there's times in my life when all I can see is everything is thriving. And then there's something that happens 2 minutes later where I seem to think nothing's working. And then I have a phone call and I get off the phone and everything's thriving. So I have an opportunity to look at life through that lens. I have that opportunity to make that my created reality in living the created life. For me, God is formless. And that everything that comes out of that formless is created. Everything that comes out of another person is created. If I know that, then I don't need to be offended. As long as I remember that and know that I have a choice in any given moment to pursue innate well-being, to me, that's everything.
Beautiful.
Consistent theme that I'm hearing here is choice. That we get to choose our state of being. Now that's a choice, moment to moment.
So we got moment to moment living.
How about you, Jay?
Well, yeah. What I'm going to share is it doesn't matter how much work you have done. It doesn't matter how far you have come in this experience as a human being. We're still going to miss. We're still going to have moments of sadness, pain, trauma, because that's part of life. Life's in session. We've heard that one before. We hear that in 12-step rooms quite often. But ultimately, it really comes down to connecting with yourself. And we can even somehow abandon that ship at times. We get busy. And when I was thriving the most was when I was connecting with myself the most. When I invested every single day consistently in me. And when we get busy to create, to do, to be, somehow, sometimes we find ourselves off the rail. We find ourselves having abandoned what we know has brought us what you referred to as joy. I know that joyful feeling. I've been there. And somehow, sometimes, we abandon ourselves. And in doing so, we get lost.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't know, but we don't know. And then we either put our head in the sand or we show up. That's how we thrive. It's not an intravenous that's given from somebody else to you. It's feeding ourselves. Compassion, hope, love, self-love, self-compassion, inspiration, connecting with ourself and connecting with divine source. That, my friends, is how we thrive. And if we're off that ride, it's time to get back on. And that's the commitment that I'm making right here, right now. I'm going back on. I'm going to go back to doing some of the basics that I've even gotten away from in my own life because of the work I do for others. Coach, Sundance, I'm talking to you, brother.
Mhm.
Pay attention to what you need
Mhm.
as much as what you think your clients need. Because
Yeah.
we usually find ourselves distracted or busy. And on that note, unless any one of you free men have anything you want to add to what I just shared,
I'm gonna add on right to what you just shared there, and I really appreciate you mentioning that. Me paying attention to that. I actually, in the spirit of that, just enrolled with my coach Paul Noyles, who has taken compassionate inquiry with Gabor Mate. He took a 1-year course with Gabor Mate and specializing in compassionate inquiry, and so I'm taking some much needed self care in this specific area. You know, as I move through things in my life. I don't always know when this stuff is going to appear. You know what? I like to be refreshed and I like to know that I'm taking care of business. And for me, as someone that coaches people, I'm open to being coached.
Love that.
Thank you for what you shared.
I'm curious, Sundance, how has it been for you to be on tonight's show? And I'm inviting you to be brutally honest. Don't tell me what you think, we think, you think, we want to hear. How has it been for you to be on Real Men Real Talk Live tonight?
It's been awesome. It's just a silent space. For me, it's like as soon as I stop talking, or as soon as one of you men stop talking, it's like there's a very deep silence.
What does that mean for you?
Well, for me, that's a very clear space for transmission to occur. We are connected through the realms of consciousness. For me, that is a timeless thing. And so to feel that connection so deeply is really powerful, to be able to be a witness to it. And I really commend you men for what you have and what you've created through this, because this is powerful. This is creating an opportunity for people to get a message that they might not hear otherwise. So I just acknowledge you and commend you and how you're showing up. What you were sharing about like your own self-care too, Jay, for me, it's like, for me, it's so powerful to witness another man be honest about that. And when I'm hearing you say that, I was like, yeah, you know what? There's some things I want to look at too. And this is why I hired this coach to do this, is because now I get to sit with this with someone that is aware and knows and that is also a master at their craft. If you've hired a marketing coach, don't expect them to take you through trauma. They're a marketing coach. Don't put that on them unless that's the agreement. I don't know why you would hire a marketing coach to do that. If there's stuff coming up in your practice that has nothing to do with that coach is qualified to do, hire a coach that's qualified to do that type of thing. And for me, I believe in the power of coaching. I do. I sat in a couple of different offices as a little kid being examined up here. And for me, I found a medium that worked for me. It's different for everybody, but the medium for me that worked has been coaching, and I appreciate it. And when I'm looking to focus on something, I hire a coach that has a specialized interest in that specific area.
Beautiful. Well, I want to take a moment here just to thank you for joining us this evening. And Sundance, you're welcome to come back on a future episode when the stars align for the show and for you.
I love
But
it.
it's an honor to meet you. First time meeting you right here, right now.
Yeah.
We forego a production meeting this week and decided to just come in hot and not knowing where the show was going to go. But you showed up right on time, divine time.
Beautiful.
Chris Morrison, thank you again for joining us. Also, you just had a book release, did you not? You want to take just like 30 seconds to tell us about that book release?
Yeah, I've got books in the house, and they're here, and so I'm actually putting together mailers so I can start mailing them out, man. So yeah, it's been every step's been a journey and a joy. But yeah, if anybody's interested, the website is being kids.org.
Beautiful.
And pick them up from there, and they'll ship from my house. So
congratulations on this
thank
massive
you,
project that you had the courage to step into. And and with that, viewers, if you heard something tonight that you liked or you loved, please share tonight's show out with your friends and family, either through social media or through email or any other way.
I want one last thing. The amount of going back and forth in the comments over here between everybody has been phenomenal. I think it's the most I've seen since I've been on the show. So Mary, Katrina, and Nancy, thank all you guys. Like, that's been phenomenal to kind of like you see me and Jay kind of looking over and stuff, but just like thank you guys so much. Like I really appreciate it and love that part of this, the community that comes into this. So thank you guys very, very much.
And on that note, I think we went about 12 minutes over the hour. Time is just an illusion. And of course, on a show topic like what we dived into tonight is one that's worthy of going overtime, OT. And other than that, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Viewers, of course, we love you. Without you, we'd just be four men coming together and just having a conversation. But with you here, it brings more relevance to the topic. And so for that, we thank you. And other than that, I hope to be back. We hope to be back next week with a new episode for 199 next week. But for the moment, I want to thank all of you for joining us right here, right now on Real Men, Real Talk Live.